Thank you everybody for being here this afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here today to moderate this fireside discussion on family business, legacies, survival, and growth. My name is Karina Kamel, and I am based here in London as Al Arabiya TV's London correspondent covering business news. The title of this conference is Opportunity and Adversity, and I'm hoping we can explore how family businesses in particular in the Arab region are dealing with the challenges faced by them and by businesses in general, given the current geopolitical and economic challenges that the global economy is facing and the MENA region is facing in particular. I'm honored today to be joined by two very distinguished panelists. I'll start with Patrick, since you're sitting closest to me. Patrick Chalhoub is joint CEO of Chalhoub Group, which is the largest luxury distribution group in the Middle East, handling operations for global brands, including Louis Vuitton and Dior. You work in retail, wholesale, and also you provide marketing services as well, so really kind of diversified in the retail sector. Patrick has been involved in the business for 30 years and oversees currently the retail and commercial marketing operations of the whole group, as well as the retail operation of fashion houses such as Louis Vuitton, Nina Ricci, Marc Jacobs, and Carolina Herrera within the UAE, where he's technically based, but also within the wider GCC region, and he travels extensively throughout the GCC. The group manages more than 600 standalone retail outlets and department stores within fashion, beauty, and luxury gift sectors. I'm also honored to be joined by Mishal Kano, chairman of the Kano Group, one of the largest and most diversified, independent, and longest-running family-owned groups of companies in the Gulf region. Mishal is also one of the most iconic business figures in the Middle East. He's regularly included in listings of the most powerful Arab businessmen, and he oversees the Ahmed Kano Group, which operates across a range of industries. It's one of the most diversified in the GCC, working in shipping, travel, machinery, logistics, property, energy, and retail, including others. He also teaches at the American University in Sharjah and writes articles for local and regional media. So we're so honored that you've taken time out of your busy schedules, both of you, to be with us here today. We heard earlier today from Joe about the kind of inner workings and challenges facing family businesses, and I think it was an excellent backdrop to the conversation that we're hoping to have over the next 45 minutes. I'm going to start out by asking something that's not directly related to family business, though, because I think that given the title of this conference and given what's happening in the geopolitical scene right now, we're very keen to hear from both of you about how you're currently dealing with the circumstances that you're faced with, both in the region and also globally, and how that's having an impact on you. And Patrick, if I can start with you, when we look at the retail sector today, two things come to mind: the slowdown in China, one of the largest consumers in the world, and what's happening in Russia as well, and the deterioration in the value of the ruble. So my question to you is, can you just give us briefly an overview how, from where you're sitting, the retail sector in the Middle East has been affected? Have these global factors affected you, and have we seen any change in consumption patterns in the Arab countries in which you operate?
Thank you, Karina. Thank you for the introduction. I would say the retail scene in the Middle East have been quite in an expansion mood for many, many years. We have had expansion which were at double-digit growth till 2008, 2009. So for 4 or 5 consecutive years, we have had a slowdown, not a depression, but a slowdown in 2009, 2008, 2009. And then again, we had been in a quite slide of growth since 2010 till 2014. 15 has been a very challenging year. It has been challenging, and for me, the basis of the challenges are more local and regional challenges rather than speaking about the other challenges all over the world. The initial challenge which we have had has been the currency fluctuation, where most of the currencies of the GCC are pegged to the dollar. So we have taken a certain hit of re-evaluation of currencies compared to European currencies, which made that our prices at retail, but be it in fast-moving consumer goods, in services, or in luxury, were perceived expensive. And even with some of the rectification which has happened, the perception is still there. We have had the challenge of the economical and political situation into the area, which didn't really affect the consumers as such. Their salaries are still the same, and the wealth is still the same. But psychologically, I would say, the consumers into the GCC today are more affected about what's happening in the region, the different wars and instability, and about oil prices which fell down, and which might affect them at a longer period of time about it. So those has been other big challenges. And then the tourist mix we have changed. So in the tourist mix, but this has affected more Dubai, I would say, than other part of the region, where we had about 15-20%, especially in luxury goods, sold to Russians. Exactly. And gradually it went down with the devaluation of the ruble and Russian traveling less. So it has been really downsized.
So you are feeling an effect from that?
We do, and also the Chinese with the anti-corruption laws, with the slowdown in China, what has been affected. Having said that, we are trying to address it by really focusing on our GCC customer and local resident customer, and we are focusing also on new different markets, including some of the African markets, which are coming more in numbers into the area and developing it, or some of the South Asian countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, which today are a source of doing it. So a lot of activity is being deployed in a very challenging environment.
Well, I'm definitely going to come back to some of those points again, but first I'd like to turn to Mishal now. You operate across such a wide range of industries. I mean, it's almost like there's no industry that you don't operate in, and I feel like you're probably one of the better suited people to tell us, really, from where you're sitting, how have the various businesses that you're involved with been impacted? And I'm asking here specifically about the turmoil that we're experiencing in neighboring countries to the countries that you work in.
The sad thing for a lot of people is to understand, it is sad because we don't promote it. But we in the Gulf, specifically talking about the Gulf, we live and die by the fiscal spend of government spend. So if the government decides not to spend, I don't care what's happening globally, we're suffering. If the government decides to spend, I don't care what's happening globally, we're doing fine. Oil has been affected, and you can see that in terms of the spend. It's not to the point that things are stopping, at least in the two major markets.
So are you saying that you are experiencing right now the effects of the decrease in spending on, can you be specific, what countries are you referring to?
Okay, I won't say that there has been a significant slowdown, but there has been a slowdown. I mean, there's no disagreement on this point. You can see that from the two markets for us of significance, which are Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And both of these economies have fortunately enough of a reserve that they can continue to do their projects. But what they've done is a project that should take 18 months has gone to 24 months. With 24 months has gone 48 months. And you can see the payment being slowing down. But that doesn't mean there isn't business. Now, that's the one aspect of it. Now, the happy aspect of it, hopefully, and I know I will not be, make a lot of people happy about this in our part of the world. But should the Iranian-US deal go through, I'm looking forward to a fantastic amount of money, at least in the UAE, not necessarily Saudi Arabia, but at least in the UAE, an influx of money coming into the UAE from overseas companies wanting to set up in the UAE to serve the Iranian market. And also you'll see a lot of money coming in from Iran, which was stuck, coming into the UAE because it's a gateway for them to go outside. So from that aspect, at least, I'm looking forward to a good few years to come. Maybe 2016 might be too early, but 2017, 18, and 19 will be very good ones. In addition, at least again, coming back to the UAE, and which the rest of the Gulf can also benefit from, will be the Dubai 2020 Expo. There's going to be a lot of construction that has to happen. All of this is going to add benefit to the to the local market, and hopefully to the regional market, because no one lives, as they say, it's not an island. We're not an island. We pick up from other places, and other places pick up from us. And fortunately, again, for us, both Patrick and myself, because we're in Dubai, specifically working in Dubai, we can see all the trade that happens both eastwards, the subcontinent, the Stans, and the Far East, and westwards, which is also East Africa, West Africa, and some parts of Europe, which also utilize the UAE, specifically Dubai, as a gateway back and forth.
So if I can now turn to the topic of family-owned businesses, would you say that being a family-run company has been one of the key factors in your success as a company, or do you feel that you've achieved the success despite being a family business?
It's a very loaded question. As a family, in our part of the world, being part of a family is an important aspect because it's protection. And we're still tribal. You can try, cut it whichever way you want. There's still a certain amount of tribalism that exists. And as long as you understand that, then you can understand how to utilize it and what to expect from it. But irrespective of whether you have a big family or a small family, and whether your business is reliant on a family or not, if you don't have the proper professionals, if you don't have the proper people with the ideas and the goals and the drive to move towards where you want to go to, it really doesn't matter. I mean, I can think of family after family where they have a very strong family name, very strong family connections and network, but the governance is bad within the organization. The professionals aren't allowed a chance to create and do. And you can see that this company eventually either collapses or just goes by the by. And then you have smaller companies, smaller family businesses that have started up, gone towards being structured, professionally structured, getting things right, and focusing on actually making a business case for the people involved in the business, and you can see them prosper.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Of course. I mean, for me, the answer is very clear, unlike you. If we have reached the level of activity of which we have today, it's really thanks to having been a family business. You are speaking about adversity. We have started our business in Syria in 1963, had to leave because of the economical instability of Syria, continued in Lebanon. In 75, we had to leave because of the civil war, continued in Kuwait, and we have to leave in 1990 for the Iraqi invasion. Anything but a family business wouldn't have been able to continue if we were not remaining very focused and thinking very much long term and having around us loyal team members who were ready to fight, start again, and having all the energy about it. The fact of being a family business and to remain extremely focused in our activity has definitely helped us to every time be able to fight adversity and gain and become even stronger than ever before.
So then following on from that, I'd like to ask you about the idea of governance and institutionalization. How have you managed to achieve such strong institutional frameworks within the company that have allowed you to remain focused in times of adversity? And how do you have those systems of governance in place? You've been with the company for 30 years, so you must have been instrumental in creating those frameworks. Can you tell us about that for those listening here today?
Of course. I mean, when I joined the company, and in fact, fortunately for me, it has been 35 years now, we were about 100 people. Today, we are about 12,000 people. And basically, it was extremely important to put in place, and to put in place when the first generation was still around and is still around, but not anymore active since many years, a system of governance which could create a sustainable part of it. So initially what we have really been doing is to try to take the best of the two worlds, the best of what family business could offer, and what the best of the family business could offer is really promote our values, our beliefs, our way of doing business, and have no mercy about having it executed. So if one of our executive and one of our company were doing extremely well, but were not respectful of those value, ethics, way of doing business, they still were not giving satisfaction and could be moved out. So really extremely strong because of promoting those elements which make it part. Always thinking long term. On the other hand, try to do it in a very professional manner with having, I would say, everything which a public company would have. A board of directors with non-family members which are there, CEOs which are appointed by the board, executive committee which is empowered and living about it, people who have clear KPIs. So really trying to run it as absolutely like a public company could run, very professionally, and a family with all the values which the family can give.
Mishan, when we were chatting earlier, you told me that you feel like there's this misconception that a lot of people have, and they assume that a publicly traded company is perhaps better managed and better run than a family business, but that's a myth?
Let me give you an example, just before I sound like someone who's a know-it-all. Let me give you an example of a family business that you all know and is world-class in as far as governance and how it's run. How many of you today, at one point or another, or within this week, had the Mars bar, or had the Snickers, or Milky Way? That's a family business, a closed family business. Most of you, by the way, if you know about in family businesses, will not know of this company unless you're really in the trade itself. The public listed company is a company called Archer Daniels Midlands, or now they've changed the name to ADM. But their competitor is a company called Cargill. Cargill is a closed, family-owned business. It's bigger than ADM. It's run better than ADM. The problem is it's a perception. The people have this perception. It's a panacea. You go public, everything's fine. Most family businesses, by the way, at least in our part of the world, are not prepared to go public. They have so many issues where they're not willing to be transparent. They have so many secrets. They have so many feudal little entities that exist within an organization. They don't want these things to come out. And more important, and this comes back to our part of the world, the regulatory bodies. How strong are they? Are they willing to? I mean, I've seen publicly listed companies where a member of the board gave their plane to a member of his family to use. Where was the regulatory body to hold them accountable? Was the AGM to hold any of these people accountable? But the thing, it's a perception. I don't think, the reason reason companies go public is because it's a way of raising funds. And that should be the only case for it. If you want to do it, you do the governance internally, you fix your house internally before you go external. I mean, I'm sorry, if my house is falling apart, I'm not opening the doors and allowing people to come in.
So have you ever considered taking the company public?
No.
And you, Patrick?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What I would like, again, is to make sure that what has been given to me, I can pass it away, build equity. I'm not interested in giving money to my children. I'm interested that they build themselves and they could benefit of an equity which they have to develop. So it's a true belief. What they will do with it will be their concern. I mean, I'm clear about it.
I want to get your take on this next topic as well, and I know that we were discussing this earlier as well. You told me about the issue of succession, and you felt like that is something that perhaps isn't, not enough time is devoted to it, and I think Joe alluded to it as well, the issue of leadership, and while the patriarch is still around to kind of make those decisions. Can you share your experience with us?
Oh, dear God. You really don't like me. We just met today, and you really don't like me.
She thinks you are a patriarch. This is why.
The most important element for success in a business is not how much money you make. It's what are you passing down to somebody else. If I'm a good manager, whether it's public or private company, it doesn't matter. If I'm a good manager, if I'm a good leader, I have first to choose someone who's going to come and take over from when I leave. But here's the point. One of the problems what we have, especially, I'm talking specifically within the Arabian Peninsula, one of the problems we have is first, we have to accept that the person who's coming in, either of our family or not of our family, is qualified enough. That's the first issue. And the second issue is a mental issue. I have to understand that my time on earth or in the company is finite. And the problem is, I don't want to think that. And you find a lot of people when they say, not when I die, but they'll say, if I die, you can do this. I'm like, what do you mean, if you die? It's when you die. Because we're all going to die. We're all going to leave. And people don't want to leave. This is a very hard part. How can I create, before talking about succession, and by the way, a lot of people will talk a beautiful game about succession, about structure, governance. They'll talk it. Go and see how it's being implemented. The problem is, I want to believe that somebody else is going to come into my place. But I don't want to see it happen. So I'm going to try really hard to ensure I'm not saying everyone, because there are smart people who will say, you know what, I've reached the point and I want to leave. But most will say, I need to find the person who is going to screw up so that I can be called back to be the savior. And if you think it doesn't exist, it happens all the time. And family businesses are even worse because I know which one of my family members is going to screw up, and he or she will be the one I choose, so that when they do that, I will be called.
But Mash'al, this is true in family companies, it's true in governments, it's true in public health company. You find always the same phenomenon. But also the other part is true, that if you are a good leader, you have to prepare yourself to become a little bit not empowering your people around you. You have to put in place certain structure where at one point in time you withdraw from it. And this happens as well.
This is only if you mentally are prepared to do that. If you're not, you will find excuses not to happen. And by the way, the difference between a family business and a non-family business, whether it's government or either, is that in a family business, I know who every trigger within my family, each individual, what causes him or her to think in what direction, and no one knows how to pull those triggers better than family members.
Well, actually, this is bringing me to my next point, and I was just wondering, how do you manage the emotional side of things? Your children and nephews and nieces are potentially being sort of prepared to join the company, even if they're not officially with you at the moment, if I understand correctly. How do you deal with the emotional side of things when it comes to hiring, firing, deciding whether you're going to have a subsidiary, and perhaps selecting whom amongst your children and nieces and nephews will be in those positions of leadership?
It goes back to governance. I mean, to create a good governance, and when I say create a good governance, it has to start by myself before starting by another generation. So we have a board with 3 non-family members, 4 family members. The 3 non-family members are elected by the family board for 3 years and then renewed about it. They are the one appointing the CEO, and they are the one who are verifying that he fill all the cases, and who have give him a mandate which is limited in time, including myself, and have a retreat age, which is the maximum at which a CEO could stay. When it comes to non-family members, they are the non-family board members who will assess if the family members are able to join the group or not, and at which position, and not anyone from the family who will be emotionally linked to it. So our duty...
So you're not actually solely responsible for that decision-making process?
I'm not at all when it comes to family members, at all. Having said that, what we have done is to make sure that all family members are being trained to become shareholders. So being a shareholder, because they will have shares into the organization, will give them certain rights, certain benefits, and certain obligation. And we have to make sure that they can exerce it and exerce also their obligation, but it doesn't mean they are part into the management itself about it. And into the fact, part of what they will give is, again, this belief in long-term, in values, in DNA about it. Now, we have to see how much it survives. But we are lucky enough to have a small family, so we don't have the 120 family members which Joe was speaking about.
So how are you guys planning on overcoming the sort of 3rd-generation curse that was referred to earlier?
Sad to tell you, I'm a member of the 4th generation, and I have a cousin who's younger, actually, who's older than me, but is a member of the 5th generation who's also working. So we've managed to do that.
How have you done that? Can you give us some concrete examples?
It starts off really from my uncle Ahmed, who passed away. In that, when him and my uncle Mohammed, the ones who basically, although they didn't start the business, they professionalized it, if you want.
Your family business is one of the oldest in the region.
They professionalized it in the 40s by bringing in professional managers to come in. I think that was one of the reasons why we have been able to survive. Yes, we have board members where we sit there, but it was actually quite interesting when I first joined the company to see how, even though my family, between my father and my uncles, etc., and we're always sitting over there and talking and discussing aspects, but it was the professional managers who had the final say. Even though
non-family member professional managers?
Correct. And it was interesting to see, because you can then start saying, okay, because I'm emotionally attached to something, I will have a different point of view. The other person who's sitting there is looking at the benefit of the business will have a different point of view. If I allow my emotions to get involved in it, sometimes that's good, sometimes. But most of the times it's not good. So having a third party, being able to look at it from a different point of view and looking at it from a professional benefit for the business mindset, I think has been one of the reasons why we've been successful.
Has it been difficult for you at times, and I don't know how much detail you can give or if you can give actual examples about this, but how can you, if faced with some kind of a family feud or a family rivalry, have you had to deal with that? How have you been able to separate between that and the running of the business?
I mean, we haven't had to deal with it, so I cannot much comment, but we have certain mechanisms in place for both trying to solve certain issues with different steps which could be done. And we have gone in few occasions to the first initial steps without having to go to the ultimate step, which would be to buy back the shares of the family member at a certain point in time if all the other steps were there about it. And again, for me, it goes to this governance part of it. Now, it's easy to say, but sometimes it's something which you haven't forecasted, which could happen, and then you have to make sure that it will be solved. But perhaps you have a better experience, Mashal.
I've had, recently, I mean, I've had an ongoing feud with my uncle who passed away, which lasted about 3 years. But the difference is, I think there was a realization by my uncle and a realization by me. I can have a personal issue with him, and he can have a personal issue with me. But as far as the business is concerned, we take a very professional look. Does this work for the business? Ahlan wa sahlan. It doesn't work for the business, we stop there. But that's an issue we have, the governance structure that allows us to move things forward. But I'm telling you, it was one of the roughest time periods I've had, because he's my uncle, no matter what. And it dawns on my head sometimes that, you know, I'm fighting a person who is 40 or 50 years older than me. And I really shouldn't, because it's disrespectful. But as I said, fortunate as far as the business is concerned, I don't recall that what he did or what I did affected the business negatively, because we had a running feud.
So I'd like to ask you now about sort of looking towards the future. What are some of the challenges that you face when you're growing a family business? If you're a publicly traded company, there are many tools. If you want to raise money, if you want to expand, you can have a rights issue. You can do things like buy back shares. How do you overcome the challenges of growing your business when you're not a publicly traded company?
It's really not that different. It depends on what are you looking for. But there's also one added advantage being a family business in our part of the world. And even though bankers, I don't know if there are any bankers over here, but even though the bankers in our region say, no, we don't do this anymore, it still exists. This is a concept called name lending. And one of the biggest problems we had was what happened in Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to get into that one, but I think everyone here is quite familiar with the story. But even though they said, we're not going to do name lending, because it's a family, because people know who you are, because people rely on who you are and fulfilling your requirements, your obligations because of your name, they will lend against nothing. It's purely name lending. So in a family business, that's actually an advantage, because I don't even have to explain why. And I've had arguments with people saying, I want to see your books. I'm like, no, you're not going to see my books. I don't care what you want. I'm not going to show you my books. Unless there is a reason to see my books, why would I show it to you? And not because I don't want to, but because I don't trust you. And this is an issue. This is a major issue in our part of the world. Non-disclosure agreements are worth nothing. If tomorrow I give you this information, whatever the information is, and it gets leaked, that's you take my business advantage. Why would I do that to you? Why I can't hold you accountable. I can't sue you. I can't take you to court. So you can see why there is an advantage of name lending. Again, that also comes in as a benefit for being a member of a family business. Would I find alternatives? Yeah, you can. Again, if you have an organization of 10 companies, you can spin off one if you want. Not the full company, but you can spin off one if you want. There are too many banks over there with still a lot of liquidity, even till today, who'll be more than happy to find good companies, reliable companies, who they'll lend money to because they know they're going to get the money back and the money is going to be working. So it's not necessarily a closed circle, if you want.
What about you, Patrick? What challenges have you faced, and how do you grow your company?
Just to build on what Mashal was saying about financing, because definitely when you grow and you continue growing quite successfully, you have these issues of financing. And how have you dealt with it? Unlike Mashal, we have been extremely transparent in having accounts which are consolidated and which are shared with our financial network under an NDA, which hopefully they will not do, but still I would say we have nothing to hide and we have been quite transparent. But this is not the issue. And the fact is, how can you build trust? And once you build trust, then what you are saying is totally right. Once you build this level of really being able to fulfill your commitments and always fulfill your commitments, to be transparent, and you have difficulties, share those difficulties and the way you are dealing with them, then you have a lot of support internally or externally. So one of our thing is always remain transparent and never break the trust or be courageous enough to be able to face it. The other part, we have remained extremely focused in our activity, and sometime, if we want to continue growing, we have accepted to partner and not to have the whole cake for us, but to partner with some of the outside partner, and we have accepted to spin off once again.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, I mean, we have made a certain partnership in different activities, be it with our suppliers themselves, not only because they were intending to come to the market, but because we're not able to fulfill their gross activity, and the only way was to put more money, which we have asked them to share with us. We have made some venture with some of our competitors in order to be able to, at the same time, acquire them into their activity and build a stronger activity, but not having it all for us, but building it together, so they became shareholders with us rather than becoming competitors to us. And the other thing is to always see what is core and what we could spin off. And sometime, and even recently in the past few months, we spinned off very profitable activities, but which we felt are not core, in order to focus and invest in what we felt is much more core.
Was that a difficult decision to reach?
It is, and especially when it's a very profitable part of it. But this is where, again, you have to make sure that you have the capacity of taking decision, which sometimes needs to be courageous enough in order to spin off either things which are losing money or things which are not core to you, because you want to invest into what is right.
Is that something that you've had experience with, Mashan? Are you considering spinning off any units, or have you?
Spinning off, no. Selling off parts of it, yes. Something will happen very recently, very soon, and I'm not privy to open my mouth and say what it is right now. But it'll be something significant, and it's a nice thing to know that there are third parties who think your business is so well run and well managed that they want to be part and parcel of it. So that part's is a nice thing.
We'll wait for the news. We'll break it on Al Arabiya, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope so.
Shameless plug.
By the way, on the issue of trust, my family has been in business for such a long time. When we say there are many things that you can write to the bank as a guarantee. It's a bank guarantee, a letter of guarantee, etc. We have there's something that I don't think exists anymore. Oh, sorry, not used anymore so much. It's called a letter of comfort. It holds no legal wording, weight. But we signed those. And as far as I'm concerned, if I put my moniker on that, then as far as I'm concerned, it's a guarantee. But I don't want that bank or the third party to hold me at ransom for that. So if I sign and I agree to something, if I say I'm going to do it, then I will do it. It's as easy as that. But I don't like people holding me to ransom. That's why I won't give those information. I've seen enough to know that I've come across where someone has had his information placed on my table. So I know I'm a bit cautious about that. I'd like to be transparent. I really would like to be transparent.
No, but I think the most important is the trust, and here we totally agree. And I think that the transparency could help this trust about it, but the fact that you always fulfill what you have, even if you don't sign and you say it, this builds your reputation, and this is the most important asset which you have.
I want to open the floor up to questions in a minute, so start thinking about your questions. We expect some good questions from you. But before we go, I just want to get your thoughts on one final note, which is the role of women, because that is clearly one of the things that's come up in the discussion previously. To what extent do you feel that family businesses can be an avenue for women to reach more prominence, especially in the Arab world? You mentioned that you have a very high percentage of women within your organization.
First, basically, in a family business, you have men and women in a family. And at one point in time, the women have rights, hopefully the same rights, but I would say have rights into it. And we have had very prominent family businesses in the GCC, which are run by women and still are run by women, and which are giving the example about it. So I think it's something which is definitely happening in family businesses and definitely happening in the GCC. Now, when it comes to my family, I had a mother which has been involved into business and really a partner to my father. I have a wife which is having her own business, but I'm totally her partner. And I have a niece which hopefully will join the business, and she is as groomed as the other boys. But when it comes to the organization, 25% of my executive committee are women. 52% of our 12,000 team members are women, which is make us very proud of it, but also needs from us to be adapted and to adapt our policies, because again, they might have other constraints. We spoke about the social constraints we have into the Middle East, which we have to take care of, but there is also the fact that women has constraints of having to raise a family, and we have to be able to help to deal with it. So we have to create the framework in order to do it. And apart women, into the Gulfanization. I'm not a GCC national. 56% of our resources in Saudi are Saudi national, and over 28% of the whole workforce is GCC national. So I wouldn't say we are the champions, because although we have been awarded several times, we really are trying to be able to be an attraction for the GCC national, and we cannot afford to pay the same salaries that are paid into the government, so we have to create other ways of attracting.
And Michal, yes, tell me about how important women are to your organization. Do you see them being part of your growth strategy going forward?
I'm sorry, women, what are they? We don't see them. We don't see them in our part of the world. They exist. Listen, I'm sorry, I hear this again and again regarding special position or special treatment towards women. If you do that, if you say, here, I'm going to treat women differently than men, then by all means, what you've done, so you've already started by saying that you are not good enough. And I don't like that. If you're good enough, whether you're a male or female, it doesn't really matter. If you're good, you're going to be in that place. And people are going to recognize you, irrespective of whether people think of you in this way or that way. Now, smart, intelligent people don't look at race, nationality, political affiliation, gender. They don't. They say, okay, is this person the right person for me or my organization in this position? They'll take him or her. That's the smart way of doing it. I'm not going to say I'm going to give more, I'm going to block a certain percentage, which I hear sometimes.
So you're not in favor of the whole quota system? We're seeing it here in the UK, for example.
I find that, honestly, if I was a woman and they were talking to me like this, I'm like, what, you think I'm stupid? I don't know how to do it? I can't achieve this without your help? I mean, sorry, there's a certain amount of...
You feel that approach is slightly patronizing towards women?
Yes, exactly. And I think a person... now, the one thing I would require is that it's fair in terms of opportunity, it's fair in terms of education, as in you give them the same opportunity, you give them the same education, and you give them the same attempt to get to that place. And if they fail because of they don't have the ability, and if they succeed, it's because they have the ability. And anything other than that, I think, is detrimental or degrading to the other party whom you're trying to raise. I don't see why you should be there. Again, that said, it's important to make sure that the playing field is level. If that's there, then it doesn't really matter what the gender is, or what the race or nationality, etc. We in our part of the world, we are struggling with something called nationalism, as in localization. Whether it's in the UAE's Emiratization, whether it's in Saudi Arabia, Saudization, and so on and so forth. And I think it's the same thing. All I'm telling you, if I do that, is that you are too stupid to be in that place without...
I'm not giving you this job because you're qualified, just because you're a woman or because you're a UAE national.
Thank you. I want you to come in because of the merit and your ability. Other than that, you shouldn't be there.
But, Michal, what you are saying, I cannot but agree with it. Having said that, there is needs of adaptation in order to attract those people who have the qualification.
You mean flexibility?
On most ways.
Working women?
I mean, a working woman anywhere into the world has certain obligations towards the family, which are a little bit more complicated than for men. They have to take, they have a social pressure in our part of the world, which is a little bit heavier. And we need also giving the same opportunities, the same ways of dealing with them. If we do not create certain elements which could support them into those difficulties which they live, then they will not be able to do it, not because they are less qualified.
So you're saying you need to foster a corporate culture that is flexible for families,
foster the culture,
not just women, but also
certain
fathers.
adaptation. Also some adaptation into their working hours, into the fact of when they go on maternity leave and how long you could prolong it, into the fact of their social pressure in countries like in Saudi Arabia, where we have started with having women into our organization in 1998, when women, with the authorization of the government. So, but you need adaptation in order to do it. And then judge them at the same way, and then remunerate them at the same way.
Patrick, I'm sorry, I'm going to disagree with you, but
it's fine.
It's saying I'm having my cake and eating it. You can't do that. Either I'm saying everyone's on the same level playing field, and I'm giving opportunity to everyone, or I'm being the. Again, I'm not saying this to be nasty, Patrick,
no,
but I can't be the parental person trying to help people just because of certain obligations. If the woman or the man wants to be in that place and can do the job, ahlan wa sahlan, welcome.
Yeah, you can. What I'm saying, they can.
If
often better than other colleagues,
fine.
men or women.
If she wants to, if he, okay, wants to go and take care of his kids, that's his problem, not mine as an employer. Unless there are certain rules and regulations imposed by the government. If she wants to take care of her kids, that's her problem again. I need to also think, as far as I'm concerned, imagine if I had to do that for every time everyone wanted to do something along those lines, how many people would I have to employ to cover the people who have gone? And that becomes, in your case, for example, in some of them, which is retail, it might be easier because you have numbers that you can replace. In other businesses, it becomes harder and harder. Now, the mention was mentioned before is a lot of the women like to go towards HR and administration and or marketing. That's the usual thought. Why?
Because they're more flexible?
No, because then they don't want to take the challenge on. And the reason they don't take the challenge on is because of what you've mentioned, social, okay? I don't want to be seen as a strong person because then I will I hate saying this because it sounds so sexist, but it sounds as though if I take on that challenge, my chances of getting married become slimmer and slimmer because I'm seen as a man.
Do you not think perhaps also that a woman would think that perhaps a job outside of those areas or in a higher seniority level would come with a lack of flexibility that would allow the woman to juggle the various responsibilities she would have as a wife and mother? Or is that not something that you would consider as an
employer, do I ask the guy whether he's going to be a father? So why should I ask a woman if she's going to be a mother?
It's really interesting to hear both of your thoughts on this because this is an issue that we're not going to resolve here today. It's a debate that's really... it's a debate that's raging all over the world, and here in the UK, there's a lot of talk about whether...
But I have a question. How many women do you have in your organization as percentage of your workforce? If you have to...
I don't know because I don't keep count of those things.
Yeah, but
I don't keep count of the gender.
Whatever.
Honestly, I don't keep count of gender. But if you want to say what you call, as far as we're concerned, most of my business, unfortunately, will not be attractive to women because I'm in shipping. Oh, seriously, how many women want to be in shipping? Even as a guy, I tell you, I wouldn't want to be in shipping. In travel, we do have a lot of travel associates who are women because they simply like that. I'm also in heavy machinery. Again, how many women want to be in heavy machinery? I'm in oil and gas. How many women want to be in oil and gas? So it's hard for me. I'm not in retail. I'm not in banking. I'm not in what we consider sexy business. I'm not. I'm in a boring, stodgy, old business. And oil and grime seems to be attractive more to men than it is to women. Now, I don't know if this is a perception that men and women have.
Right.
But unfortunately, this is a society.
It's a shame that the third panelist isn't here with us today because I'm sure she could have definitely shed some light on her perspective. Fatima Al-Jaber was unfortunately unable to join us at the last minute. But I really, before we go, I know we've run out of time, but I'd like to take just a couple really quick questions. I'm going to take 2 to 3 at once, and then we'll give them a chance to answer.
Thank you both, Patrick and Michal. You're truly an inspiration to family-run businesses for new generations like us, like most of us here. As a member from a family business in Syria, what single advice would you give to the generations that have been affected by the Arab Spring?
Excellent question. And sir, all the way in the back, yes.
Hi, my question to Michelle, I mean, really what you said, I couldn't agree more, but realities on the ground in Middle East, I think, you know, you talked about creating a, playing field sort of, but you're talking about countries where women can't even drive, or, they weren't allowed to participate in certain types of employment, or sort of restricted to HR or, certain functions. So, I think, so my question is really, how do you, if your idealistic sort of approach is taken, how do you sort of progressively move forward with some of those issues that women and other sort of, ethnic groups are facing in, countries like Saudi and Bahrain, etc.
Okay, great. So I think we're going to have to restrain ourselves to these three questions. The geopolitical situation, does it lead you to think about diversifying outside the region? Number two, what advice do you have to young entrepreneurs or family business members who've been affected by the Arab Spring? And thirdly, the issue of women. Are you willing to be a factor in changing your own culture to encourage a more level playing field?
I start one by one, or you want me to cover the three?
Perhaps you want to start by, pardon me. Would you like to answer all of them in one go?
As you
go ahead.
Tell me. So, when it goes to the international business, we have decided, again, as a group, to remain extremely focused on our activity, focus on our region of the world about it. So how do we leverage the risk? Two things. One, we have some outside investment, and those outside investment are investment which are not, we are not operationally involved into it. And those outside investment are easier to disinvest, but in order to maintain our focus into our region of the world. And two, I would say, we created it at good times, but in order to be able to face adversity, if we have adversity, some, I would say, security funds. And I give few examples which are quite interesting, I would say. First one, we have this end of service indemnities which are being paid into the Middle East. Most of the organization, public or private, would put it on their balance sheet but would never keep the money aside. We had decided to put all our end of services outside the region. So if we have certain adversity, at least anyone employed into the organization would at least get their money, and it won't be held into the balance sheet and not be able to do it. We created another fund where we contacted a lot of bankers, and perhaps some of you could help us, but then we decided, we did it another way. We created a fund where we discussed with our bankers, would you lend us money if we have adversity, if we have an economic or political part of it? And what the banker said, yes, of course, but put clauses into it which they might not give us the money about it. So what we did for it is to take the money. So we took quite a large sum of money, which we took from the bank, so we are paying interest on it, which we have put aside in secured places. And the difference between it has been for us an insurance policy. So we have an insurance policy, so if for a few months I am unable to trade, then I can pay my rents, I can pay my salary, and I can have time to reorganize myself about it. So this is how we are leveraging about adversity. And if I continue, I'll to the second question.
Yeah.
About what we're seeing about an advice for, I would say, companies, organizations, families who have been affected by what has happened in some of the countries of the Middle East. I would say our family, unfortunately, have lived it a little bit, at least in two occasions, and the third one when there was the Iraqi invasion. And what we have said is to remain very focused in our areas of expertise. So our areas of expertise are a territory or an activity. So what we have done is to move our activity in another place if the territory, which was at that time, and I'm speaking 63, 65, Syria, or which was Lebanon in 75, we moved it to other places in which we would work in our activity. So we tried to do it. And we had to restart, and thanks God we had built trust. And at some point in time, we really didn't have the means to do it. If we were not supported by other families or some of our bankers who trusted us, we wouldn't be able to do it.
So you're able to adapt and have that flexibility, Mishal?
On the international front, as far as we're concerned, we look at each of our companies and we give the company free flow in terms of how they want to go. In some cases, for example, in our travel business, we have a travel business here in the UK and in Egypt, which again, I know Egypt is still out in the Arab world, but as far as we're concerned, we're outside of the Gulf. And we're looking at other parts. So it's now up to the travel division to look at that. In our shipping division, you can't but be international. If you're going to be a major player, you have to be globally available all over the place. And so therefore, that's an international business. But us as a family, our main concern is going to be in an area where we have the most political clout. And going outside means I have to go and learn something else and understand how other parts of the world work and try to take what I have, which is my only advantage, which is political clout, over there, and good luck on that one. So I'm not going to, yes, in terms of diversification, yes, we will look outside, but we look at it purely from an operational point of view. Regarding the Arab Springs, you know what? The Arab Spring depends on which country you're in. In some cases, for example, in Libya, good luck on that one. I have absolutely no idea how that's going to pan out. But if you look at a place like Tunis or Egypt, it's actually quite a better situation where you can, I know some companies that have just started up, at least in Egypt, and I'm sure when you go to Tunis, there's not going to be any that far away, where they've set up in new businesses, new ideas, and the rest of the world is starting to realize how important these places are. On the last question, and I have to answer that one because it's...
I will comment.
What do you do about the issue of women in Saudi Arabia? Well, you have two choices. Choice number one, leave. Choice number two, fight. Now, when I say fight, I don't mean pick up arms and go and fight. No, I mean fight as in try to be the change you want to be. If you want to see change over there, now if the legislation won't allow you to, that's a different case altogether. I mean, I don't know how to handle that one because that's a political thing. But if the legislation allows you and you can push the envelope and you keep on pushing the envelope, then you can get to where you want to get to. And in Patrick, I think example in terms of retail is a perfect example of it. What do you want to do? Now, I can't say just because a country X or country Y is a pain in the backside, therefore I have stopped. All the other countries in the region, whether it's the UAE, whether it's Oman, whether it's Bahrain, whether it's Qatar, whether it's Kuwait, that's not an issue. So as far as I'm concerned, if I have an opportunity, now by the way, the biggest stumbling block I've encountered in the Gulf regarding women in business, strangely or not, it doesn't come from the father, it doesn't come from the husband per se, it comes from either the brother, and more surprisingly, from the mother. And the mother is the one who goes out of her way to ensure her daughter doesn't do these things for the simple reason her prospect on getting married will decrease. And I know this is a strange thing for me to say, but I'm looking at it and I'm shocked. I know of many people, many families, whose mother has blocked the daughter progressing and doing anything significant because she's afraid of that. And I find that silly, but hey, that's their family choice.
Well, thank you guys so much. I think that we can probably have a whole conference just to debate the role of women in Arab business, and perhaps that should be a note to the organizers for next year's event. I want to thank you, but I want to hear in less than 30 seconds from both of you, starting with Mishal, what is your vision for Kano Group going forward?
For what?
What is your vision for the group going forward in under 30 seconds?
Okay. To make people who work with me happy.
And Patrick?
I mean, it's not far because I have 12,000 stakeholders in my company and 12,000 people who have to be fulfilling their dreams in coming to work every day. So if they can fulfill it, I'm a happy man.
Well, we wish you both best of luck in your respective companies. Thank you so much for being with us.